Hi everyone, in today's Collecting 101, we're going to be talking about one of the most important dimensions of collecting, and that's buying games. There's a lot to consider when buying games, especially if you want to get the best value and bang for your buck and build a collection like mine. There's so many topics. I'm going to be breaking this down into 3 parts, and today's the first part of this series. Now, before I start this topic, I want to remind everybody to please go ahead and subscribe to my Facebook group, Video Game Fans, link down below. And it's a great spot for us to share some of these thoughts, ideas on how to buy and get the best value out of our purchases and grow our collections in the best way possible. So with this, let's take a look at some of the buying trends. The first pattern we'll take a look at is for new games. And in this example, we're going to talk about a $60 game as a reference point. But regardless of the price point, as far as its initial starting price, all the games follow a very similar pattern. So the first thing will happen is somewhere around 1 to 3 months after the original release of the game, it'll go through its first price drop. Typically, this first price drop is around $20. But it can vary a little bit. The biggest factors that drive how long it takes for this first price drop and whether it's a $10 or $20 price drop is how well it's doing in sales, if it's meeting its sales expectations, or if they need to give it a boost to try to move a little bit more of the merchandise. After that, the next price drop will happen somewhere around another 1 to 2 months. And now this one is typically a smaller price drop, typically around the $10 mark. And here is where you can start to see some of the publishers doing some last big efforts to try to get the product moving, to get the returns on their investment, and again capitalize on the product itself and on the games. And then there'll be one last major price drop, or another price drop, another 2 to 3 months later, and it's typically another $10. And this marks really the lowest point that you can expect for a new game. It should be somewhere in the $15 to $20 mark. It's very hard to find new games that go below those points. Those are typically the best prices you'll find for new games. Again, the overall duration for this whole thing is somewhere around 6 to 7 months. That's the average. But some games will take a little bit longer. Some games will actually be quicker to run through this entire process. It all again depends on how big of a batch of production was made for the game and how well it's selling. Now, when we talk about the used perspective or the used pricing on games, it follows a very similar curve or pattern as far as the accompanying the new game pricing. Now, the new game pricing is a stair step, as you can see here by the graph, versus a used is more of a sloped, curved pathway, and it gets pretty close to the initial price point where of the game with the initial discount, and then slowly starts to go down. You'll see a major discount in used prices, somewhere between the $30 to $20 mark as far as a new pricing component. The used games will start going even lower and will start reducing in prices quicker. And that relates to people having already bought the game, played it, and then starting to resell it. So now you're starting to flood the market in essence, or there's more copies available in the market of both a new version and used versions where people are trying to sell the games if they didn't like it, completed it, etc. While the new price points will fix itself at $15 to $20, used games will keep on going down and typically hit a little bit lower spot than new games. And then slowly start to go back up in their pricing. The recuperation, or how long it takes for them to go back up, the biggest factor that drives that is the size of the batch that was made of the game. If they made small batches of that game, 1,000, 2,000 copies, 3,000 copies, that slope of the pricing on used copies is going to be much steeper, and it's going to gain its value a lot quicker. Ultimately, the sweet spot for buying is down to that last price drop in a used game, and a little bit after that price drop, you can expect the used game to start to go down even further. So the recommendation is be patient. Be patient for new games. Look out for the timing to buy some of these games. And again, this is the normal pattern. There's always exceptions to any normal pattern, and you have to be aware of those as well and look for those. Some examples or some genres that sometimes break this pattern: RPGs. Sometimes they deviate a little bit from this. The main deviation is sometimes they never reach that $20 price point. Sometimes the lowest they'll get is that $25, $30 price point for a new copy, and then the used version will be somewhere around that ballpark. And again, all this and the relationship of the RPGs still comes back to batch sizes. The JRPGs are the ones that typically don't have as a big following in our smaller batches, and again, have some of these variations. Ultimately, again, timing is the most important factor in this pattern, and understanding when is the right time to get these games. So the next pattern is for console releases. Console releases follow a specific pattern, and I'm sure there's a lot of interest in this pattern because of the current scarcity that we're still experiencing with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. So the pattern starts out with that little yellow dot represents the initial MSRP price announced for the console, and there'll be the initial pre-order window, and after that pre-order window is when the roller coaster starts, and the prices will spike up right off the bat, and it's what I call the mis-pre-order desperation. And these are the folks that feel a little bit desperate because they might have missed the pre-order window, or they want to be one of the first ones to get it on launch day, and they go out all out in trying to get this console. After that desperation peaks, you'll have a little decline in the price, and then you'll come with the release window. And the release window, what happens typically is prices will go up the first 24 hours, and then they start coming down because there starts to be enough supply filling in, and the prices, because there's more and more of them, more and more of the product coming out for resale or resellers selling them, the price will start coming down slowly. And then after that, you'll have the supply chain normalization window, where supply starts to slowly catch up with demand. Now again, if we reference the current situation that we're experiencing with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, here we got a combination of different factors, but the biggest impact has really been COVID and how it's disrupted the supply chain and fabrication models. Because of that, there's not enough product being manufactured, but at the same time, there's additional supply than normal because people are spending more time at home, and gaming and video games is one of the best distractions or hobbies that you can do while you're at home. So what we get is constrained supply, a high demand. That's the current situation with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. But slowly, you can start observing the prices of those consoles are coming down. They're not there where they need to be, but they'll get there. It's just a matter of time. And then after that, that whole peak period can go up to about 200% of the price of the original MSRP. So, the biggest advice there is hold temptation. Okay. Just keep on looking for when there's supply coming in from the distributors and resellers, official resellers, such as Best Buy, Walmart, Target, etc. Avoid temptation in buying from people that are flipping it from outlets, and just be patient. Okay, and eventually, once the supply chain normalizes, in a period of time after that, you're going to go through the first price cut. That period until you get through the first price cut might take a year, might take 2 years. It really depends on how well the console is doing with sales and how much of a competition it has in the market space. Right now, I don't foresee any of this a price drop in the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X until a couple of years down the road, until really the supply chain normalizes. And then after that, they're still going to wait a little bit. After that, you'll get a second price cut in the console's MSRP price, and that's about it for the normal life cycle of a video game. They typically go max through 2 different price cuts, and it's not very common to see more than that. The used price pattern follows that curve or that staircase or pattern very closely. Right at the beginning, as soon as it's launched, because there's very limited supply, the overall curves will be very close to one another as far as new pricing and used pricing, and slowly they'll grow apart. You won't see the biggest drop in used pricing until somewhere in between the first original or major price cut and the second, and that's because they're starting to get market saturation of that console. There's people starting to sell the consoles, and there's more and more of the product available. It comes back to always supply chain principles. So the optimal time to purchase that console, if you really want to get it, as far as and are patient enough, is in a used format somewhere between the first price cut and the second price cut. And then for a new format, again, it all depends on how much you want to wait. Now, this third curve, and this is probably one of the most important ones for collectors. Understanding the patterns for rare games or limited edition games, because they are a little bit of a different beast. Okay, they're a bit of a mixture of the 2 previous patterns that I showed. So they'll start out with an original MSRP, and again, that's that little yellow dot you see there. And they'll go through the standard pre-order window, where it follows that MSRP price. And as soon as that product sells out in that pre-order window is again where the roller coaster starts. Now, this roller coaster is a little bit different than the other. As far if I compare it to the new console price, it'll go out and peak right through that same window that I called previously the missed pre-order desperation window, where people get desperate, they didn't get that special edition or one of the copies of the few that were made of that rare game, and people will pay a bit extra. When the game finally comes out, you'll start to see a decline, because again, there's now copies flooding the market, and all those people that bought the game in speculation to try to flip it and make some money off of it as an investment start to sell it. So when all those people start to list the games for resale, you'll start to see a bit of a saturation in people offering the game for sale in sites like eBay or the such. And as that supply grows and the competition starts to grow, there's more units, and the price of these used games or new will start to go back down, where it'll hit a low spot because of oversupply, and then slowly start to come back up because of restricted supply. So once people flip all those copies and get rid of them, then you'll start to get the game starts becoming rare again. In essence, there's not enough copies in the supply chain and people want to get them, so that price will start going back up. And depending on how many copies and what kind of demand there is, it could be very quick, it could take some time. Some of the smaller batch games of 1,000 copies or more, they typically go back up pretty quick. Okay. So as a collector, you really have to be paying attention to these rare or limited edition games to make sure that you try to catch them at the right time, or else it can be very expensive to buy these and painful. There's two optimal windows to buy these. One is right at the pre-order window, and the other one is a bit after release when all the people flipping them have put them up for resale. And sometimes I've even seen the people flipping them really close to MSRP price, because again, there's such oversupply and they're afraid of getting stuck with it that they start to sell it for whatever they can get. So there's two optimal windows to get it. The best one is obviously trying to buy it during the pre-order window. The challenging part of that is if we talk about like console generations such as the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and the Switch, where Nintendo and Sony have allowed for smaller print batches and haven't opened up the doors for almost any publisher to come and print these games. There's so many companies out there printing them. It's so hard to keep a track of who's publishing them and when they're going out for pre-order, and it's really easy to miss them. There's a couple different spots that you can go to start to look for tips and advice on timing of these, and people will warn you, hey, this one's just coming out or has come out for pre-order. One of the spots I recommend, join us our Facebook group. We can start sharing with one another about some of these announcements to try to help to catch these. But it's very important overall to understand these curves so that you can get the best value for your money and try to build your collections as complete as possible. So from the trends we just saw, there are a lot of different dimensions to consider when you're buying a game to try to make sure you get the best value of your purchase. I hope that these graphs and analysis that I just shared with you are helpful. They summarize many years of experience in purchasing games, and I hope that this serves you so that you can grow your collection. Now please, if you would, join my Facebook group, Video Game Fans, link down below. It's a great spot for us to share, and I'd love to hear your comments about some of your observations in pricing and trending of games and consoles with the community. Thanks for watching the video. Take care.